You thought letting go would destroy you. But what if it was the beginning of your real life? There's a kind of pain that no one prepares you for. It's not loud. It doesn't arrive with betrayal. It doesn't leave bruises. It whispers. It's the pain of holding on long after whatever you were gripping let go of you. It starts as a memory, a face, a dream, an old version of you that once felt alive. You hold on with clenched fists, with shallow breath, because letting go would feel like dying, because letting go would feel like surrendering the last piece of something that mattered, like burying the version of you that once believed. And so you stay. You hold on, even when it drains you, even when it poisons your peace, even when you've become a stranger in your own skin. No one teaches you how to release. No one shows you how to open your hands after a lifetime of gripping ghosts. But there's a truth that cuts deeper than heartbreak. Holding on is what's killing you. Carl Jung once said, "Attachment is the great fabricator of illusions. Reality can be attained only by someone who is detached." He wasn't talking about being cold. He wasn't preaching emotional silence. He was warning us that sometimes what we love most is what's slowly burying us, because love, real love, can't be possessed. Dreams can't be strangled into life. Success can't be squeezed into submission. Everything you hold too tightly eventually crumbles. But still, we ask, why? Why do we grip what hurts us? Why do we fight to keep what's already walking away? Why does letting go feel like death, even when holding on feels like slow suffocation? Because attachment isn't about love, it's about fear. You don't hold on because it still lights you up. You hold on because you're afraid of the dark. You're afraid of being alone, afraid of being nothing, afraid of vanishing without the things that once gave you identity. You cling to people, not out of love, but out of fear that without them you don't exist. You clutch on to dreams that no longer feed you because you're terrified of the silence that comes after. Attachment looks like loyalty, but it's fear in disguise. Until you name that fear, you will keep locking yourself in cages and calling it home. Jung believed most of what we call love is projection, a reflection of our unhealed wounds, our unmet needs cast onto someone else's face. We don't love people purely. We love what they reflect back, the parts of ourselves we can't accept. And when they leave, when they change, we aren't just mourning them. We're mourning who we were when they loved us. We're grieving the illusion. That's why letting go feels like dying. Because it is. It's the death of a fantasy, the death of who you thought you'd be. But here's the brutal gift in that death. Letting go isn't the end of something good. It's the beginning of something real. Freedom, peace, dignity. You weren't born to live chained. Not to people, not to promises, not even to the version of yourself you swore you had to become. You were born to move like water, to give without losing, to grieve without turning your body into a tomb. But again, no one teaches you how. No one teaches you that grief is purification, not punishment. No one tells you that letting go doesn't mean you failed. It means you're finally ready to stop dying for things that wouldn't live for you. Jung didn't preach detachment as apathy. He preached it as awakening, the ability to love deeply, to hope fiercely, to dream wildly, and still be willing to let go when the time comes. Not because you're cold, not because you stopped caring, but because you've become whole, because your peace doesn't live in anyone else's hands anymore. That's the real art. If letting go were easy, you would have done it by now. You would have quit the job that rots your spirit. You would have walked away from the one who keeps breaking you. You would have stopped dragging the corpse of that old dream. But you didn't. You stayed. You kept hoping. You kept bleeding for a ghost. Because deep down, there's a secret belief that without it, you are nothing. And that's the real prison. It's not the person, not the job, not the dream. It's the story you built around them, the identity they gave you. From the moment you were born, you began writing a script about who you are, what you need, what makes you matter. And everything, every relationship, every win, every dream became part of that story. So when life demands you let one go, it doesn't feel like evolution. It feels like amputation, because you fused yourself to it. You made it part of your soul. Jung called this the ego complex. The ego clings to whatever reinforces its idea of me, titles, people, trophies, because if they disappear, the ego fears it will too. So you tell yourself you're afraid of losing them. But really, you're afraid of losing you. The version of you that made sense, the version that felt loved, the version that felt safe. Attachment isn't about what you're holding. It's about the story that object lets you tell about yourself. That's why heartbreak breaks you. Not because they're gone, but because the version of you they loved is gone too. That's why failure crushes your lungs, not because you lost something, but because you tied your worth to it. That's why losing a dream feels like death, because that dream carried the promise that one day all of this would finally make sense. But what if Jung was right? What if you meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it? What if clinging is the very thing keeping you stuck? You think you're preserving your life, but you're really preserving your prison. And it runs even deeper than that. You don't just attach to people. You attach to pain, to shame, to the wounds of childhood, to the betrayals you never named. Because pain is familiar, because pain is safer than the unknown. Even your heartbreak becomes a comfort zone. Even your suffering becomes identity. And so you stay in the cycle, in the cage, calling it fate, calling it love, calling it destiny. But it's not destiny. It's the unconscious, dragging you back to the pain you refuse to release until you name it, until you sit with it, until you face it. You will keep repeating it because you don't fear loss. You fear the emptiness it leaves behind. And in that emptiness, you're scared you'll find nothing. But what if that empty space is actually the birthplace of everything real? They never tell you the truth that sets you free. You are not what you've been holding on to, not the love you lost, not the dream you chased, not the failures you wear like a second skin, not even the triumphs you obsess over. You are the awareness underneath it all, not the fire, the flame watcher, not the wreck, the sea that swallowed it whole, not the story, the soul silently collecting it. But when that truth hits, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like death, because what dies is the version of you you swore was real, the one you thought you had to be to earn love, purpose, meaning. And that death, it's sacred. Carl Jung called it individuation, the shedding of masks, the collapse of borrowed identities, the terrifying return to your soul. Non-attachment isn't giving up. It's waking up. It's not about turning cold. It's about turning inward to the part of you that doesn't cling because it doesn't need to. But we don't learn that. We grip harder. We think if we just hold tight to the job, the person, the dream, we can save it, fix it, force it to stay. What we don't see is the slow bleeding. The tighter you grip, the faster everything slips. Love can't breathe under pressure. Dreams rot in desperation. Life dies when you try to control it. You think you're surviving, but really, you're decaying. Slowly, invisibly, hidden costs of clinging. First, you strangle love. Real love is free, fluid, present. But when you love from fear, when you cling because you're afraid to lose someone, love stops being love. It becomes ownership, control. You start measuring how much they love you by how much they sacrifice for you, stay for you, answer your endless need for reassurance. That's not love. That's fear in disguise. They pull back to breathe, and you pull harder, until the connection suffocates and dies. Second, you poison your dreams. Dreams are supposed to grow, evolve, breathe with you. But when you refuse to adapt, when you chain your identity to the timeline of a goal, you kill it. You start seeing delay as failure, progress as not enough. You forget why you ever loved the dream at all. Third, you lose yourself. You forget who you were before it all, before the expectations, before the applause, before the heartbreak. And then, when it all collapses, the dream, the job, the love, you don't just feel lost. You feel erased, because somewhere along the way, you built your entire self on something that was never permanent. Jung taught that the ego fears one thing above all: annihilation. It clings to titles, it clings to people, it clings to stories, because it believes without them, it will vanish. You think you fear losing them, but what you're really afraid of is losing you, the version of you that made sense only in their presence, only in that dream, only in that chapter. But here's the brutal truth. Everything you cling to is temporary. People, success, titles, even your own reflection. The only permanent thing is your soul. And the more you starve it with fear, the more it fades. Clinging doesn't save you. It drains you. Try holding water in your fist. It slips through. That's love. That's life. That's dreams. The tighter you squeeze, the more you lose. You think you're protecting yourself from heartbreak, but you're guaranteeing it. You think you're preserving your happiness, but you're suffocating it. One day you'll look around and realize you didn't lose the person. You didn't lose the dream. You lost yourself trying to keep what was never meant to be caged. Jung believed freedom doesn't come from control. It comes from participation, not from gripping, but from dancing, moment to moment, fully alive, fully present. So ask yourself, what are you clinging to that's quietly killing you? What are you defending that doesn't reflect your soul anymore? What identity are you still wearing just to feel safe? Because until you let go, really let go, you'll keep trading your aliveness for a lie. You weren't born to live half dead. You weren't born to cling to wreckage. You were born to float, to breathe, to burn. We hear the word non-attachment and we flinch. We think it means giving up. We think it means apathy. We think it means becoming unreachable, untouchable, unloved. But that's not what it is. True non-attachment is not about detachment from feeling. It's the opposite. It's feeling everything so fully that you no longer need to hold it. It's loving someone deeply and still letting them grow. It's chasing a dream fiercely and still knowing when to change direction. It's living vividly without needing to grip every moment just to prove you're alive. Jung never preached withdrawal. He taught awakening, returning to a self so whole, so grounded, so free, that you no longer need the world to validate your worth. You don't become cold. You become deeper. You don't shut the world out. You finally let it in without fear of losing yourself in the process. And that is the beginning of real freedom. When you cling to someone for love, you're chasing the love you haven't yet given yourself. When you cling to a title for respect, you're begging for the self-respect you've never truly claimed. When you cling to dreams for safety, you're running from the truth you can't bear to face. That real security never comes from anything outside you. Carl Jung believed that becoming your true self, the individuated self, only begins when you pull back all that energy you've scattered into the world and bring it home. You stop chasing mirrors. You start building light. And from that light, you finally begin to live, not dependent, but whole, not desperate, but overflowing. 1. Love fully. Don't grasp. Love is not ownership, it's presence. Real love doesn't say, I need you to stay. It says, I honor you, even if you go. When you love without clinging, you stop seeing people as lifelines. They become fellow travelers, souls who cross your path, change your direction, then move on if they must. You don't need them to stay forever, because you no longer believe you'll disappear when they leave. Your love is no longer a hunger. It's an offering. 2. Surrender the outcome, not the effort. Non-attachment isn't apathy. It's sacred effort without obsession. You show up. You give everything. You bleed for the dream. You burn for the love. But you don't demand the result. You don't confuse the outcome with your worth. Because you know the truth. 1,000 invisible forces shape what unfolds. Timing, chance, others' choices. And none of it is a reflection of your soul. Failure doesn't mean you weren't enough. Endings aren't betrayals, they're portals. 3. Grieve, but don't decay. Non-attachment doesn't mean you won't cry. You will. You'll grieve people. You'll grieve dreams. You'll grieve the parts of yourself that no longer fit. It will hurt, deeply, terribly. But Jung taught this. Grief must be integrated, not avoided. You mourn, not with bitterness, not by clinging to ghosts, but with sacred fire. You let it burn what no longer serves. And from the ashes you rise, fierce, dignified, whole. 4. Return to the self again and again. When the applause fades, when the job ends, when the person leaves, what's left? You, not the mask, not the survival version, the real you, the one who existed before anyone taught you what to chase, what to fear, what to prove. Jung called this the self, the quiet, integrated center beneath all the noise. You don't master non-attachment by escaping life. You master it by coming home again and again until you are so rooted in your soul that nothing outside you can shake who you are. You move differently now. You love without gripping. You dream without chaining. You show up without demanding guarantees. You still hope. You still care. But you no longer bet your soul on the outcome. You no longer confuse control with peace. You no longer mistake possession for love. You walk this world with open hands, tethered to nothing, but connected to everything. You thought letting go would kill you. You thought releasing what you clung to would leave you hollow, loveless, dreamless, lost. But here you are, still breathing, still rising, still becoming, maybe for the first time, truly alive. The tragedy was never in losing the dream. The tragedy was in losing yourself, trying to force it to stay. You shrunk your soul to fit someone else's fear. You silenced your truth to hold a version of love that wasn't real. You confused survival with living, but no more. Because now you see it. Non-attachment isn't the death of love. It's love without chains. It's the kind of freedom that doesn't flinch when people walk away, when dreams evolve, when identities collapse. You don't cage life anymore. You dance with it. You don't strangle love anymore. You let it breathe. You don't define yourself by what stays. You define yourself by what you can release. Look back now. All those things you thought would break you if you lost them, they're gone or changed. And yet, here you are, stronger, softer, wiser, freer. Carl Jung taught that true awakening happens when we stop seeking completion in mirrors and start remembering we were always whole. You don't need another person to validate you. You don't need another achievement to feel alive. You are already enough, and now you live like it. You hold lightly, you love deeply, you walk freely, you still fall, you still feel, but you no longer confuse the river for the boat, because now you know you are the river, flowing, alive, unstoppable, no matter who stays, no matter what breaks, no matter what ends. You keep moving, and that is what it means to be truly alive. So tell me, what did you finally let go of? And who did you become after? Drop your story in the comments. Like, subscribe. Let your soul be seen. You're not alone. You were never broken.